present a seminar on a simple topic, but it's a deep topic, and probably you will know what I'm talking about. But slowly we'll go into depth, and we'll see what we can do. So the topic's name is the word Krishna Consciousness, its meaning and mystery. And two things I'm going to talk about: the meaning of the word Krishna Consciousness, and there's a mystery to this word, and I'll talk about that. And Prabhupada has mentioned this in his books, and I'll show you what Prabhupada says. But the whole point is, what's the history of this word? Prabhupada didn't invent this word Krishna Consciousness. It's there in the books. And how did Prabhupada name it as International Society for Krishna Consciousness? Prabhupada wanted to name initially when he came to, he came to New York. So he came here and he wanted to name it as International Society for God Consciousness at a point of time. But then they were discussing, and then Prabhupada finally came and then he said, no, we'll name it as International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So where this word originates, what's the meaning and what's the mystery? So if we understand this word, then we understand a movement and we understand a mission. That's very important. So let's go into first the meaning and the mystery. Before that, let's talk about the history. From where did Prabhupada get this word? And specifically, when we talk about Prabhupada, Prabhupada is always referring to scriptures. Always. And if you read Prabhupada books, there is a practice you can do. You can read Prabhupada's statement and then you can think of a verse in your mind. And there'll be a verse, definitely. He's thinking in verses and then he's speaking. That's Prabhupada's style. So, can anybody tell me from where this word Krishna Consciousness?
Krishna.
Yeah.
Shri Krishna Bhakti.
Okay, fine.
𝗙𝗲𝗹𝗶𝗃.
Krishna 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗀.
Yeah, but no. She's got that. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitaṁ Kriyataṁ 𝗪𝗂𝗍 labhyate tatra laulyam mulyam ekalam janma koti sukrutairna labhyate. This is Prabhupada quotes in The Search of Ultimate Goal of Life. I don't think so they published this book now. They don't do that. Probably it's published in some other name. But in this book, Prabhupada quotes, this is from 𝗪𝗪𝗪. Rupa Goswami has written a book, 𝗪𝗪𝗪, and this is verse number 14. Actually this verse is there. Prabhupada quotes many times this verse.
It's in 𝗙𝗍 also.
Yeah, everywhere. In conversations, Prabhupada is quoting either 2 lines or 3 lines or 1 line. That's what he does. So this verse is a source of the word Krishna Consciousness. By the way, Baldev Vidyabhushan has written a commentary on this verse. And in the commentary, he uses the word Krishna 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗀. Yeah, to explain this verse. And that's a source of this word. Krishna 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗀. It's not there, I'm just telling. Krishna 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗀. Krishna means Krishna, 𝗪𝗲𝗪 means consciousness. So Krishna Consciousness. That's what that word has come. Now, what this verse is doing? Srila Prabhupada says here, you see the word Krishna. Krishna is, of course, Krishna. We get from Krishna, Krishna. But then this consciousness, from where this word comes. Now, this word bhavitaha, mati means consciousness. Mati basically means mind or heart, or intelligence. Mati means that. And this word bhavita means an intelligence which is absorbed. That's what this word bhavita is all about. Absorbed. So just like you take a cloth and you color it. So you take a white cloth and you color it orange. So we can say this cloth is oranged. How do you say in English? Maybe.
Yeah, orange.
It's oranged, isn't it?
Yeah.
So similarly, our consciousness, our mati means consciousness, our intelligence or mind is bhavita. Bhavita means it is absorbed in what? Bhakti ras. So Prabhupada takes an intelligence which is absorbed in the mellows of devotion. That is called as, Prabhupada calls that consciousness, Krishna consciousness. a consciousness which is absorbed in the mellows of Krishna service or devotion to God. So he got this word from here, Krishna Consciousness. And in fact, by the way, there's a book directly written by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. The book's name is Krishna Bhavanamrit. Krishna Bhavanamrit. There's a book, and Prabhupada gets this word. Now the whole point of this verse is very important, because if you want to understand why Prabhupada named it as Krishna Consciousness, the key is here, in the rest of the verse. And this verse says, let's see what Prabhupada says about this verse. Okay. Prabhupada says, Krishna Bhakti Ras Bhavita Mati Kriyatam Yadi Kutopi Labhyate. The anxiety for Krishna. Now you see this point? Prabhupada translates ras. The word ras is there. Bhakti Ras. Generally ras is translated as mellows. Prabhupada does that. Or maybe taste. What else ras is, what else they define? Huh?
Juice.
Juice, okay, juice. Juice of devotion. Generally you define like that. But Prabhupada doesn't do that. Like that. Prabhupada says anxiety for Krishna. Now that's a very unusual translation, because generally you don't translate rasa like that. But it makes a lot of sense, because if you have a taste for Krishna consciousness, for Krishna, and specifically his service, when we talk of Krishna, we are talking of service, because Krishna without service makes no sense. You can't contact God without service. So, if you have taste in service, then you develop anxiety for service, isn't it? When you have taste in service, then you slowly start developing taste in the object of service. That is Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says in one of his purports to Bhagavad Gita, this 12th chapter, 9th verse, 𝗙𝗲𝗹𝗹𝗀 samadhatam, Prabhupada says, first a devotee develops taste in the service, and gradually he develops taste in the object of service, that is Krishna. And then when you develop taste for Krishna, then you develop anxiety for Krishna. Now I'm going to talk about this, but that's very important. Prabhupada brings this word anxiety. Most of these literal translations to this verse, they will not put this meaning anxiety to the word rasa. Mostly they will put mellows or taste, something like this, but Prabhupada does that, and for a purpose. I'll tell you why. So Prabhupada says the anxiety for Krishna, if it can be purchased, immediately purchase it. Rupa Goswami said, Krishna Bhakti Ras Bhavita Kriyatam. Just purchase Krishna anxiety if it is available somewhere. The next question will be, what's the price? Tatra Laulyam Api Mulyam Ekalam. That anxiety can be purchased by anxiety. Now that's interesting. Laulyam means greed or anxiety. Basically, greed means anxiety for something. So he says, if you want to buy anxiety for Krishna, then you have to be anxious. It can be brought by anxiety. Anxiety in service brings anxiety for Krishna. If you're anxious for the fact, when will that day come that I will be anxious to attain Krishna? Actually, Bhaktivedanta Swami Thakur used to say, so somebody asked Bhaktivedanta Swami Thakur, see, I can't control my mind while chanting. It's common. It's a FAQ. I can't control my mind. So what to do? So Bhaktivedanta said, well, cry. Cry to Krishna, please Krishna, help me. That's fine enough, isn't it? But then that devotee said, I can't even cry. So Bhaktivedanta said, okay, cry that you can't cry. That's what he said. So that's what Prabhupada is making the point. The anxiety can be purchased by anxiety. If you don't have anxiety to attain Krishna, then we should be anxious that why I don't have that anxiety. What's happened to me? Am I a defective piece or what? Some problem. So that anxiety. So I'll do it. No, Janma Koti. So Prabhupada says, okay, fine. So you'll get that anxiety. Fine. But Prabhupada says, no. Janma Koti Sukruti Rapina Labhyat. The anxiety is not available even by millions of births or pious activities. So the anxiety is not easy. There's example, Rupa Goswami says, Prabhupada also says in conversations that, okay, we need anxiety for Krishna. I mean to say, we have to be truthful. Do we have really anxiety for him or not? We might have anxiety to serve him. We all have a little bit. But then the anxiety to attain him, that's a different question. So Rupa Goswami says, okay, if you go to a shop and that shop person says, okay, you know what, I have anxiety for Krishna, do you want? And then Rupa Goswami says, okay, he says, just buy it. And then he says, okay, what's the price for that? What do you want? He says, I want your head. I want your head. So Rupa Goswami says, cut your head, give him, but take that anxiety of Krishna. Just cut your head and give him, because that's, until unless Krishna is completely satisfied, he'll not give this gift. It's a gift. You can't just manipulate your mind and get this anxiety. It's not possible. It is on spiritual platform. It's a gift by Krishna. And Prabhupada says, satisfy Krishna in all respects. Prabhupada says that, by the way, in his books. So until unless we don't satisfy him, I mean to say, until unless we don't impress him, we can impress him, by the way. Do you think that? Do you think we can impress him?
Eventually.
We can impress him, he's God.
No, or impress. I thought you said embrace.
No, impress.
No.
We can impress him? How do you do that? I mean, he's God in his eyes. How can he be impressed? He's a perfect person.
He has everything.
So, but...
pleasing the spiritual master.
Okay, yeah. See, in his eyes...
just doing the best service that we can.
But the whole idea is, how can he be impressed? Because he's beyond perfection, and in his eyes, whatever you're doing, it's absolutely nothing. Even if we do our best, it's, from Krishna's perspective, it's zero. It's probably negative, because how does it matter? I mean, we are just people.
How do we know that Krishna is not impressed?
Yeah, that's the question. So, but at least first we should know how to impress him. And then the next question, how do we know that he's not impressed? So we can impress him. Yeah.
Bhava Bhakti is Sri Krishna Akrshan, that even Krishna gets attracted to pure devotion.
No, that's the whole point. Why?
Because
that's my question.
Says that Bhakti attracts Bhakti and Krishna is attracted to Bhakti.
Okay, fine. If you want to attract Krishna, what do you do? That's my question. What do you have to do? Can 16 rounds completing and some service attract him? Yes or no?
No, you have to show desire for him in the heart.
Okay, is Krishna more attracted to Dhruv Maharaj and Prabhupada or us?
Prabhupada.
Isn't it? So there's a difference between Prabhupada and us. There's a difference between Dhruva and us. What's that difference? That's what I'm asking. If we can figure out that difference, then we can advance. That's the whole point there.
It's the desire to serve.
No, see, if you answer desire to serve, then that's a very subjective...
Out of love.
No, but the whole question is, your answer is very subjective. You can't quantify it. I need an answer which you can quantify. Otherwise, everybody will say desire to serve, then how do you quantify? You see the point? That Prabhupada says it's science, by the way. I was talking in the morning, and Prabhupada means it. In fact, I'm writing a book on this, how Prabhupada meant what he said.
Oh, somebody wants to talk about Krishna all the time. You can quantify that.
Well, neophytes also talk
No,
all the
Krishna.
time. Sometimes when you are new, you're very excited. That can be confusing.
I think Krishna knows, maybe, with what you're working with, if you're truly giving your best.
Okay, he knows, fine, he knows, but
You can't quantify it.
I have to quantify it, because suppose if I want to know about you, not you want to know about yourself, then what do I see in you? But I have to see some quantification, some symptoms. That's the point there.
Tangible evidence.
Surrender.
Evidence. Surrender is a very subjective thing, isn't it? Isn't it? Okay, so that's it. That's what is Prabhupada's movement all about.
I was there on that morning walk.
Which one?
I was there on that morning walk.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
So-
I got initiated on that day.
Wow.
Oh, great.
Srila Prabhupada.
1976, April.
Yes. Yeah, April 26,
Wow.
1976.
So you are here.
So this is
He's
what
from
happened. Srila Prabhupada, he always liked to go on a morning walk And the Melbourne
And this,
Botanical Gardens were absolutely beautiful. So what happened is we were walking along, and the ladies were at the back and the men were at the front, and then couldn't really hear. But some of the ladies, when Srila Prabhupada would like put his foot on a leaf, for example, that take that leaf up, that his lotus foot had been on. And then we got to a tree, and then Prabhupada took a leaf and then crushed it like that, and he smelt it. And because it was the Botanical Gardens, there was, it said what type of tree, and Prabhupada said what type of tree, and then they said, it's a camphor tree, Srila Prabhupada, and he said, oh, that's Radharani's favorite fragrance. And then one devotee said, Srila Prabhupada, we're always told that we should be in Vaikuntha, and Vaikuntha means without anxiety.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I find that I'm always in anxiety. And so Srila Prabhupada said, so you have a choice. To be alive means that you're going to be in anxiety, otherwise you are zombie.
Oh, okay. Zombie. Oh, zombie. Okay. Zombie.
You are zombie. So you have a choice.
Okay.
You're going to be in material or spiritual anxiety. Now, Mother Yasoda was always in spiritual anxiety.
Oh, that's what Prabhupada connected like that.
And then, something that he said kind of confused me a little bit, and that was when you're on book distribution, it seems like that might be completely spiritual, but it's your consciousness really.
Prabhupada said that?
Yeah, because when you're on book distribution, you might think, how many books did I do?
Oh, okay.
So then that's looking at.
Oh, Prabhupada said that. Huh? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I have to see that. That's
anyway,
great.
I remember this because
That's very nice to share.
It's very. And can I tell you another story?
Okay, but I just wanted to. Otherwise,
okay.
They'll come and then.
I wanted to tell you another.
Yeah. Maybe I'll finish and
anxiety.
then we'll hear about that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to finish. Otherwise, what they're going to do. Okay. So fine. And now the whole point is, if you want to impress Krishna, there's one way. Now the way is, you see, in a class, a teacher, sometimes teacher is impressed by the student. Sometimes a teacher knows way beyond the student. Sometimes, but she's impressed. Why? Because when the student answers beyond his adhikar, this word adhikar means, how do you state? Adhikar means his capacity. If the student answers beyond that his capacity, teacher is impressed. My God, this boy is in 5th grade, but he's answering like a boy in 6th grade or 7th. Then he's impressed. He's far intelligent than all other people. That's fine. So when you do something beyond your capacity, Krishna is impressed. That's how we impress Krishna. That's what Prabhupada did. Prabhupada's God brothers, they also preached. No question, I mean to say, they are also devotees, elevated devotees. But Prabhupada stretched himself beyond capacity of a human, and that's what impressed Krishna a lot. And that's why Prabhupada says, if you want to impress Krishna, this is one word. Prabhupada says in his letters, in his conversations, Prabhupada says, just as I took risk for my spiritual master and for Krishna, you take risk. So if we go beyond a capacity, if we stretch ourselves, then Krishna says, yeah, this is a person. He's looking for that. He's looking when we go beyond a capacity, because within the capacity everybody can do. Am I right? It's okay. I mean, if
beyond comfort zone.
Yeah. A little beyond comfort zone, because within the if suppose you have a holiday, suppose you go and live in Vrindavan, and you chant 16 rounds daily. That's okay. Krishna is happy. But if suppose you are in Sankirtan and there's so many things are going on, services, and then you are chanting 16 rounds, pleases Krishna more, because there in Vrindavan you have a lot of time. You can even have chanted more rounds. Right? So that's what is capacity and risk taking. So so that was the point I was trying to make there, to impress Krishna. Krishna is impressed, he gives you this gift of spiritual anxiety. But the whole question is, it's not easy to get this anxiety, really, to go beyond a capacity and do things because body is limiting, health. How can we do like Prabhupada? Prabhupada said, you do like me. Do as I am doing, Prabhupada said many times. Prabhupada also said, do more than I do. But we can't even imagine doing even 5% of what Prabhupada did. He was working on a superhuman platform, or maybe beyond that. So what to do in this case? So how to get this gift? So Krishna gives a solution for that. Krishna says, okay, if you can't stretch yourself beyond your capacity, if you can't do all these things, okay, start. How do you start? Krishna says this verse in Bhagavad Gita, 12.8, famous verse. Atha chittam samadhatum na shaknoshi maisthiram yasogena tato mamechhaptum dhananjaya. You see, it's a beautiful verse, by the way. Krishna says, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without devotion, then follow regulated principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. See there? The desire to attain Krishna is, in other words, anxiety to attain him. Am I right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. If I have a desire to get an Apple i12, it's going to come, by the way. Apple i12. Apple i12. iPhone. Apple
I thought he meant the fruits.
Yeah.
No. Okay, I speak slow. So Apple iPhone 12, if you desire to buy that.
It's not out yet.
It's not out, but it's going to come. I was in California, so I was in Apple. They were telling they're going to release it after some time. But the whole point is, if you have a desire to buy it and if it's not out, you'll develop anxiety. I want it. There are new features and this and that. That's the whole point there. If you like something and if you desire, then you develop anxiety. Now suppose if I give you a drink, only this much, and that drink is from somewhere, from a different planet. It's the most sweetest drink you have ever tasted. And if I give you just this much, and you drink it, and after that, what will you say to me?
Is there more?
I want more. And if you tell me, and if I ask you, do you want more? And you say no, then what does that mean?
You didn't like it.
That means you don't like it, you see. So if we have a desire to attain Krishna, automatically that desire will develop into anxiety. You can't stop it. Because Krishna is the sweetest. So the fact we are not developing anxiety to attain him, there's a problem there. The problem is we don't know him properly. And that's what Prabhupada says, that Prabhupada quotes, Janma karma cha me divyam. Try to understand Krishna. The more you understand him, the more you know about that personality, the more you will be desiring and anxious to attain him. And that's the point here. But how to get this? Prabhupada says by following regulated principles. That's a trick he gives. The rules and regulations of devotion are designed in such a way that if we follow properly, then automatically we'll develop a desire and anxiety to attain Krishna. The rules are designed in such a way. That's how it goes. That's why it is said, Nana Shastra Vichara Naika Nipunau. Our acharyas have planned like that. So now the whole question is, how does, is this clear, all of you? By following rules and regulations, you develop a desire to attain Krishna. That's clear? A desire to attain Krishna means anxiety to attain Krishna.
Eagerness.
Yeah, eagerness, anxiety. Yeah. You're anxious. When will I attain God? Just like Mahaprabhu. But the whole question is, how does following rules and regulations help to achieve anxiety to attain Krishna? That's a big question, because most of the Sahajyas, they will not accept this fact. If you go to Vrindavan, they will not accept it. They will say, on the contrary, they will say following rules and regulations will obstruct your devotional flow. How do we say like that? Your flow of emotions it will obstruct rules and regulations. That's the argument. In fact, this was a philosophy by 𝗪𝗂𝗪 𝗪𝗲. He was one of the, he was back at the time of 𝗦𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗪. And he was a big scholar at that time. And he got this philosophy, and he said, forget all the rules and regulations of devotion. Forget even chanting, he said. Yeah, he said, because it's a rule. He said, just your sentiments, let it flow. And then you can attain whatever, all that love. And then you can attain spiritual anxiety for Krishna. He did that. But of course, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, our devotees, Mahaprabhu's devotees, they just rejected him. And this, I think there was this Shri Krishna Priya Thakurani. She got really, she was actually associated with actually the 𝗙𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗪. 𝗙𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗪? She got really offended by that. And his daughter, Hemlata Thakurani, she actually went to 𝗪𝗂𝗪 𝗪𝗲. She broke her kanthi and she excommunicated him from the society. 𝗪𝗂𝗪 𝗪𝗲. She just said, get lost, because it's not right. But that philosophy continued. And it still stays in Vrindavan. It's still there. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, one of the brothers of Bhaktisiddhanta, Lalit Prasad, he brought it back somehow. And it stayed. Now, but the whole question is, now we have to understand this important point. How does following rules and regulations lead us to spiritual anxiety? It's a good question, isn't it? How does following rules and regulations help us to develop a desire to attain Krishna? If we can understand this, then we know what we are doing. Then we know Krishna consciousness. Okay, so here's a purport, 12.8. Prabhupada says, it's a simple thing, but if you analyze, it's a deep thing. Bhakti Yoga is a purification of senses. At the present moment, material existence, senses are always impure, being engaged in sense gratification. But by the practice of Bhakti Yoga, these senses can become purified. In the purified state, they come directly in contact with Supreme Lord to be ultimately elevated to stage of attachment to Krishna. Now, desire to attain Krishna is Krishna consciousness, alright? A consciousness which has a desire to attain Krishna. So, how we become Krishna consciousness, that's what we are talking about. And Prabhupada mentions in this purport. Now, this is a sequence he's saying. When we follow rules and regulations, what happens is, by following rules and regulations, your senses become purified. That's okay. Now, why does following rules and regulations purify our senses? That's a big question. And I will, okay, fine. So you give me this point and I'll explain it, but let's go forward. Follow rules and regulations, your senses become purified. When your senses become purified, you come in contact with the Lord. In the form of holy name, in the form of prasad, in the form of devotees, deities. In impure state, you are not really in contact with Krishna. So there is no contact. There is God, but we are not in contact. That's how it goes. And when you come in contact with Lord, then you become attached to Him. Naturally, because He is all good. When you become attached to Him, that attachment brings anxiety to attain Lord. Because mother is attached to the child, when the child is separated from the mother, she is very anxious for the child. So, when we become attached to Krishna, Krishna is there in spiritual world, we are here, and naturally this should bring anxiety. So, okay, but there are questions here in this sequence. Prabhupada mentions it, but there are many questions here. The first question is, how does, is it okay, is it clear, all of you, this sequence? But there are big questions in this sequence, by the way, many questions and many deep questions. It seems easy, but it's not easy. And I'll tell you what's the question here. Okay. Before I go in the questions in this statement, I just want to tell you one thing. Very important thing in this sequence is, Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness means activity in path of affection. Now, following rules and regulations means activity. Prabhupada always says, do something for God. Krishna consciousness means activity. So, the more you act for God, there's a saying, actions, how you act, in that way you start thinking. That's how it goes, isn't it? So your behavior defines your thinking pattern. It's the other way around also. What you think, that you act. But it's the other way around also. So Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness means activity, and that's very important because activity will lead to anxiety. You have to do something for God. And that's where it begins. That is why the first step is rules and regulations. You have to do something. Okay, what to do? Suppose a girlfriend, or suppose a boyfriend says to girlfriend, you know what, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. He says, I love you. But he doesn't do anything for her. She says, do you really love me or what? You'll keep on saying I love you? Or you'll give me some gift or take me to maybe somewhere in New York, maybe somewhere. So you see the point, simply speaking expression of love is action. That's always there. That's why Prabhupada says act for God. So Prabhupada defines Krishna consciousness as activity, right from this logic. Prabhupada also says Krishna consciousness means to purify desires. You see this? You see why I am showing you this? Because it's a chain. Prabhupada has said many statements about Krishna consciousness. Now people get confused. People say, sometimes Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness means activity. Sometimes Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness purifying senses. Sometimes Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness means anxiety to attain Krishna. So what is Krishna consciousness? Are you getting my point? All answers are correct. Because all answers are part of this chain. All answers are correct. If you say Krishna consciousness means activity, that's all right. Why? Because that's the first step. If you say Krishna consciousness means to purify desire, that's also correct because that's the second step. Okay, now I'll ask you a quiz. If I say Krishna consciousness means attachment to Krishna, is it correct or wrong?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's a step there. So if you've seen a chain pattern, then all answers are correct. And we should not be confused. But the whole point is we should know this chain, where the answer falls. So like Prabhupada many times said, Prabhupada says book distribution is what's the best service? It's a topmost service, Prabhupada said that. But then Prabhupada sometimes said preaching is a topmost service. And once I think who was telling? Jayadvaita Maharaj, he was telling. So they were also going for a morning walk somewhere, and Prabhupada said, okay, Govinda restaurant is a topmost service. Prabhupada said that, and they were saying, and so Prabhupada is changing answers. And then once Prabhupada was going, so Prabhupada in one of his lectures, he said the topmost service is to read Bhagavad Gita. And then the next morning they were going for a morning walk, and then Prabhupada asked, he asked, what's the topmost service to Krishna? So one of the devotee, he heard it last night and he said, Prabhupada reading Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada says, no. He just said no. He says, chanting is the topmost service. So what do? There are so many answers, you get confused. But all answers are correct because we have to understand, we have to see in a holistic picture what Prabhupada is saying. That's what I'm saying. Word Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada has said many definitions, but if you know the sequence, you exactly know what Prabhupada is talking. All answers are correct. Okay, Prabhupada also says Krishna consciousness means self-abnegation. You know this word self-abnegation? It means denial. So where this comes here?
Purification of the sins.
Okay, purification, rules and regulations, yeah. You can put it anywhere. Krishna consciousness means denial. So rules and regulations, what we are prepared, what we is basically following rules and regulations means we are denying ourselves of sense gratification. That's the whole point we are doing. If we are following rules and regulations and we are still gratifying our senses, the purpose is defeated. It's over. So all these definitions are there. You got the point there? It's clear to all of you? Okay, now we go in this detailed. Okay. How does rules and regulations purify our senses? Can anybody tell me? How does it purify senses? Let's talk about this.
Well, if you're Well, regulations usually, I think, refers to what you refrain from doing. So if you're refraining from engaging your senses in sense gratification.
Okay, you know what? Before that, we have to define what is purification. That's another thing.
Take away the desire for material.
That's it. The definition should be complete.
And take away the desire for sense gratification so that you increase your desire for Krishna's service.
Okay, fine. So, according to Jnanis, purification of senses is just getting rid of material desires. But not according to devotees. According to devotees, purification means actually becoming conscious of Krishna. That's what our definition is. That's what we define as. Because if you say purification is just absence of material desires, that's a negative thing. There's nothing positive there. So we don't define like that. So how do we purify senses? By following rules and regulations. What happens is, you know this verse, everybody? Satatam smartyo Vishnu chatuchit sarva vidhi nishedasya terave kinkara. One should always remember Vishnu, never forget him. All injunctions and prohibitions are dependent on these two principles. This is a very beautiful statement. This is from Padma Puran, by the way. Always remember Krishna, never to forget him. Now what happens is, when we follow rules and regulations, what's the purpose of following rules and regulations? To make us remember about Krishna. That's the whole point. If we are chanting and we don't remember him, our chanting is defeated. That's all. It takes some practice to chant and remember him, but we have to remember him. If we are chanting and we get frustrated, then you don't really achieve much, because after chanting you get frustrated. And sometimes it happens with all of us. If we are tired after job, we come from our jobs and we are tired and our rounds are left, then I tell you, chanting brings frustration because you're trying to complete your rounds and it's not completing, and it just defeats the purpose. Sometimes it happens, that's okay, but it's not happening regularly. So we have to remember him. Now what happens is, when we start remembering God, so devotion is, Bhaktivedanta Thakur says, devotion, following rules and regulations, is an art. It's not a ritual and a mechanical, it's an art. Everybody can follow rules and regulations, but everybody doesn't advance. Because very few people understand how to follow them in a way that it invokes remembrance of God. That's an art. And all of us are very different people, right? We have different mentalities and different. So how to follow rules and regulations, how much to follow, that's another question. So we have some basic level of, Prabhupada gives a basic thing, minimum 16 rounds, Prabhupada says that. But then how much to do and how to follow, it will vary from different people, persons to different people. Just like 𝗙𝗪𝗪 is there today, some people can actually sleep less, chant more. Some people simply cannot. Am I right? So people who can sleep less, chant more, okay, do that. People who cannot, okay, no problem. But both of them should do in such a way so that they remember Krishna. Otherwise, it's a defeat. It's useless, basically, if you want to achieve love of God, if you want to achieve anxiety. So, if you keep on remembering Krishna, what happens? When you keep on remembering Krishna, what happens is we start remembering his qualities. You can't separate Krishna from his qualities. You start remembering that person. And when you start remembering Krishna and his qualities, slowly you imbibe those qualities. Because that's how it goes. That's the ideal. Krishna is our hero. Am I right? That's how it goes. He's the ideal person we are following. When you keep on remembering him, actually Krishna says, Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita, Puta mad bhavam agata. Prabhupada says, you will attain to my nature. Krishna says, if you do devotion, you will become like me. In nature, in quality, not in quantity. That's a philosophy, by the way. The same in quality and not in quantity. So you start imbibing all the qualities of God. And when you start imbibing the qualities of Krishna, you start becoming pure because He's all pure. That's how it goes. And that's a test of devotion. If we are becoming pure, okay, now here's a question. Now this is the answer here. If you are becoming pure, how do you know you're becoming pure? I just said the answer.
You're becoming like Krishna.
Yeah, you're developing the qualities what Krishna has. That means you're becoming pure. You can't judge purity simply by absence of material desires. No, you can't do that, because that can happen by suppression also. Yogis do that. 𝗙𝗂𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗪, Bhagavatam says. And really, I mean, we will not be able to suspect and understand whether we are becoming pure or not, because sometimes desires get suppressed because of peer pressure, maybe because you're living within the devotee community, and many times when you're alone, then they come back, and then that's why people fall down. Otherwise, why devotees have to fall down? Because they were there. So we don't really judge by that. What we judge devotion is by qualities. There's a verse in Bhagavatam. What's that verse? Anybody knows? 𝗙𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗪𝗀𝗪 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗀𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 samasate surha. So, yeah. Hara bhakta se kotomat guna dhavato bhai. Bhagavatam says, wherever there is devotion to Krishna, there will be all good qualities manifested. Bhagavatam says that. And that's how it happens. So the test of purity is how many qualities you have. How many divine qualities you have. And because of that, Krishna dedicated a whole chapter of Bhagavad Gita on divine and demoniac qualities. 16th chapter? 16th?
Yeah.
Divine demoniac? Why did he do that? I mean to say, he didn't have to give a chapter on divine and demoniac quality. Demoniac qualities, of course, he didn't have to even speak because we know that. Demoniac qualities are very natural to us. We understand. But then he gives divine qualities to help us know where we are, what we are doing. And that's called purification of senses. That's how rules and regulation purify senses. This is Srila Prabhupada. Anyway, this is okay. Okay. So, this is the meaning of Krishna consciousness. Everybody understood that? It's clear? So, now I will tell you the mystery of Krishna consciousness. I talked about the meaning. And the meaning of Krishna consciousness is, what's the meaning? Okay, if somebody asks you what is Krishna consciousness, how do you define it?
Attaining the nature of Krishna.
Anxiety.
Okay, the first thing is anxiety to attain Krishna. That should be there in your mind. But then there can be many other answers because there's a chain. How to attain that anxiety? So Krishna consciousness can be following rules and regulations because it helps to attain anxiety. Krishna consciousness can be purification of senses because by following rules you purify your senses. Krishna consciousness can be being attached to Krishna. That's okay. Krishna consciousness can be to come in contact with Krishna. All are fine. All are fine. So that's why Prabhupada defines in many ways in his books. But the goal is to develop anxiety. Okay, that's about it. Now, what's the mystery of this word? Can anybody tell what's the mystery there? There's a mystery there. You see, Krishna consciousness works in 3 levels. And Prabhupada talks about this in his lectures and in conversations. One of the meaning of Krishna consciousness is thinking of Krishna. Simple. To be conscious of Krishna, that's what we were talking about. Conscious of Krishna means think of him 24 hours. Prabhupada says that. It's a simple word. Krishna consciousness. But this level of devotion, it is the beginning of Krishna consciousness. It's not the end. And when devotee keeps on thinking about Krishna, what happens is he advances. And when he advances, goes to next level. And what's the next level? Serving, service is always there. I mean, service is an integral part.
Feeling.
Okay, there can be many answers, but yeah, I can understand. The answer comes from this word Krishna consciousness, by the way. The answer is in this word. There are 3 layers of understanding this word, Krishna consciousness. That's what I'm talking about. One layer is being conscious of Krishna. That's fine. Thinking of Krishna. When you keep on practicing, then you go to next level, and the next level is, should I tell? Or you want to
It's not absorption?
really think about that? Huh?
Loving it.
Love it.
Using the heart.
No. Okay, the next level is thinking what Krishna is thinking.
Oh, I love it.
That is also Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada says that. To be conscious what Krishna is conscious about. And basically this is a Madhyamadikari. Thinking of Krishna is a Kanishta. That's what neophyte level is. We are trying to think of Krishna. But Madhyamadikari, because he can think what Krishna is thinking. Now, how can he think what Krishna is thinking? Yeah, because he's well versed in scriptures. Okay, can anybody tell me what's the definition of scripture? How do you define a scripture?
Knowledge that's revealed.
Knowledge that is revealed, okay. In connection to Krishna? Can anybody tell me? In connection to God?
It's the sound vibration of his flute that Brahma heard and then he wrote the scripture.
Okay. Okay, fine. There can be many answers. In connection to this seminar, that's the whole point there. You just think, the answer is here, thinking what Krishna is thinking. Scripture is defined as, there's a beautiful definition. Actually, Madhva also says, and Prabhupada also hints that Scripture is the mind of God. Am I right? What is Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am revealing my mind to you. This is how I think. This is what I think. Or in other words, we can say scriptures are samskaras of God. We have, you know this word, samskaras?
Yeah.
We have our impressions in our mind. The impressions, what God had in His mind, that is a scripture. He said, okay, this is what I think, this is what I feel, and here, this is like this. So people, Madhyamadikari is defined as a person who is well versed in scriptures. Shastra Gyan. So the more you read books of Srila Prabhupada, the more you know how he thinks. And that's very important. I mean to say, I'm traveling all around the world and people are not reading Prabhupada books. Am I right? Or not? They're reading, but they're not reading as they're supposed to read. Prabhupada says, read my book like law books. Prabhupada said, even if in your dreams somebody asks you, what is there in Nectar of Devotion, chapter 21, you should be able to tell that. It should be like that. I mean, we remember our name, we remember our relatives. Why not Prabhupada books? So that's what is these books all about, Chaitanya Bhagavatam. These are impressions in God, in Krishna's mind. So you are, by these books, you are trying to access His mind. And the more you read these books, the more you know what Krishna is thinking. You're thinking what Krishna is thinking. That's how it happens. So when you honor Prasad, you exactly know what Krishna is thinking. Now how do you know? Chaitanya Charitamrita speaks about that. When a devotee honors Prasad, how Krishna feels. Or for example, Aarti. We are doing Aarti. So there's a process of Aarti and there's a meaning of Aarti. Now every item of Aarti carries a meaning. Like for example, we offer incense to Krishna. Or maybe flower, we offer flower. And then we give flower to devotees. Now there's a meaning to that. The fragrance of flower, Krishna says in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the fragrance of flower when we smell, that fragrance are the desires of Krishna. When we offer to Krishna, He puts His desires in those flowers, in form of fragrance. When you smell, then those desires go in your heart. Then you're inspired to fulfill these desires. That's what is the significance of flowers there. You see, now we know what He's thinking. We know exactly. When we smell flowers, Krishna is thinking, oh, this my dear devotee, he's smelling my pure desires in the form of the fragrance of flowers. And he's trying to absorb it so that Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam, he wants to fulfill it. That's what is happening. The whole Otherwise, if you offer flower and if you smell, it's a ritual. It's a ritual. If we don't understand what's happening, that's basically the difference between ritual and a devotion. Confucius, Chinese, you know Confucius?
Yes.
A Chinese philosopher, he was dead against rituals. And he said rituals are spiritual activities which are dead. Spiritual activities become enlivened by the meaning behind that. And when we understand that meaning, then those activities become alive and then they become devotion. And they're no longer rituals. So there's a thin line there. So whatever we are doing in temple, it can become a ritual if we don't understand what we are doing. That's what you were telling, book distribution? You were telling that? Just now Prabhupada said. If we are doing book distribution and if the consciousness is not there, we don't understand what we are doing, then that becomes really mechanical. Of course, there's a benefit in that, but the whole point is we have to attain the goal of love of God. That's what Prabhupada is talking there. So you see, thinking what Krishna is thinking, that is Krishna consciousness. To be conscious what Krishna is conscious. That's the next level. And how do you go from first level to next level?
Shastra.
Yeah, I just told you.
Reading this.
Yeah, are you understanding what?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm lost. I'm lost. I don't know. You're just sitting.
Like you said, this is simple, but it's deep.
Yeah, simple. Yeah,
So
deep,
you're going a little
yeah, I'm going deep.
deeper
Yeah.
and deeper.
So by reading scriptures, you get to this level, and that is why if you go to any Vaishnava Sampradaya, Sri, Madhva, Vallabha, if they want to know whether you are advanced or not advanced, they simply ask you one question: have you read scriptures or not? If you have not read scriptures, and if you tell them, well, I have not read scriptures, but Krishna is so sweet, they'll say, okay, go back. You need to advance. Now you see, there's a difference there. There's a difference. There's a difference of being sentimental and having real emotions for God. There's a difference there. Real emotions give you access in the mind of God. False emotions give you access within yourself, not in the mind of God, by the way. You become more conscious of yourself in false emotions rather than having access of Krishna. And that's basically called as privileged access. You know this word, privileged access, in philosophy? Devotees have a privileged access in the mind of God, which ordinary people don't have. And how do they develop that? How can they access? By the knowledge of scriptures. That's how it goes. So that's the second level of meaning, thinking what Krishna is thinking. If we can attain this level, then we can say, okay, we are Madhyamadikari, or we are advancing, we are understanding, we are realizing what he is thinking. Okay, what's the next level? When you practice this.
Krishna thinks of us.
Okay, okay. So, yeah. The next level is thinking what Krishna is thinking about you. You got it. That's basically Uttamadhikari. Prabhupada makes this statement, by the way, in one of his conversations. Prabhupada says you become perfect when you can think what Krishna is thinking about you. That's perfection. That means you are united with Krishna now, and you are in communion with God. That's how it goes. This is the topmost level. Uttamadhikari are at this level, topmost devotees. And okay, fine. So tell me, how do you go from second level to third level? From first level to second level, it's pretty easy. By reading scriptures. The more you know about Krishna, the more you read about scriptures, you can know what he's thinking. How do you go from second to third? Thinking what Krishna is thinking about you.
Mercy of Krishna.
Huh?
You are getting the mercy of Krishna.
Okay, one factor to go from there is, big factor is mercy. You can't really jump there. But anything practical we can do. Anything we have to add.
Service.
Yeah. Service is a very big term. Service is not very specific.
Action.
Service, devotion, surrender, sincerity. I don't like these words. In the sense, these answers are very broad and very specific to really make it as a science.
Maybe if the spiritual master reveals his feelings.
Spiritual master, no. we don't accept that in our philosophy because.
I mean, he's supposed to be the representative, right?
Yeah, but Prabhupada always said, spiritual master has his own journey, you have your own journey. You have to fly your own plane. Prabhupada always said that. Prabhupada said, I can guide you, what you have to do.
All right, but he's supposed to represent Krishna for us, and he's supposed to represent Krishna.
Yeah, his function is to give us instructions and inspire us. That's all we have to do. If we take Krishna as a spiritual master, still we might fall down if we don't follow his instructions. It might happen. Krishna's son, 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗀𝗪, was a demon. His son became a demon. How does that happen? So the whole point is following. So okay, how do you go from this to this? That's a big thing.
So if you're thinking of what Krishna's thinking about you, you would want him to think well of you. So you would want to do things that make you well thought of in Krishna's eyes. Like the regular principles and reading and chanting and all those.
No. If I ask you one thing, what do?
Cry.
Cry? Okay.
Anxiety about what he's thinking about.
Okay, so I'll do one thing. I'll give it as a homework. And you keep on thinking about this. It's a good idea. And I'll give you the answer is in Chaitanya Charitamrita, by the way. Read that and you'll find the answer. It's a good exercise, by the way. If you go and really think, it's a good way to think and how to.
You just do us in the ocean.
Huh?
I mean, it's hopeless.
No, it's not hopeless. You keep on thinking. That is Krishna consciousness. To think about. Actually, you know what? Krishna consciousness. You know what? Wise people, they don't look for answers. They look for questions. That's what all philosophers says. People who are not wise, they look for answers, but people who are wise, they look for questions. And sometimes we don't know what questions are. And that's why we don't find answers. Isn't it? So this is a big question. How do you know that Krishna is thinking about you and what he's thinking about you? And how do you get to this platform of this consciousness? And this verse is in Srimad Bhagavatam, by the way. 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗀𝗪𝗃, 11th canto. So 11th canto you read.
Did you experience?
Okay, one answer can be reciprocation. Tesham satyoktanam bhashtam priti-purvakam dadami buddhi-yogam tam. Reciprocation can be the answer. He'll reciprocate. That answer can be there. He'll start reciprocating with you. In what way? Actually, one reporter was with Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada said that Krishna reciprocates with me. And so these, I think all these big devotees, they were sitting there, and then the reporter was little disturbed, And then those devotees said, no, actually Prabhupada meant that Krishna reciprocates with him in a very intuitional way. And Prabhupada said, stop it. Krishna reciprocates literally. He talks to me.
Oh my God.
Prabhupada said, in fact, Bhakti Santa used to talk to 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗃. He used to go sit and used to talk to him. So one way is, okay, he will start reciprocating with you. But that's the whole question. How do you go from that point to that point? That you please see about that. But remember what I told you about the risk. If you impress him, you go from this to this. You have to really impress him. From thinking of Krishna to thinking what is Krishna is thinking, that your endeavor can do by reading scriptures. So from Kanish to Madhyam, you can go from your endeavors. That scripture says, from Madhyam to Uttam, our endeavors cannot take us there. You have to put, Prabhupada says, extraordinary endeavors. Maybe. And that happens when you risk your life for God. You know what? I'll tell you one just interestingly, I remember. There was a saint, Sufi, you know Sufis? You know Sufis?
I only hear the name, but I don't know the
name. No, they are Sufis, Islamic saints, Sufis.
Oh, mystic.
Yeah, mysticism of Islam. So there was a Sufi saint. And he was praying and he said in his prayers that, "Oh my Lord, I want to kiss you." He said that. I mean to say, they talk of love for Allah. He said, "I want to kiss you." And then Allah, He said to him, "You know the price of that?" He said, "The price of one kiss is your life." That's how it goes. So the whole point here is, if you want to think what Krishna is thinking about you, the whole point here is, in the last step, in first two steps, it is from you to Krishna. Alright? But in the third step, it is from Krishna to you. It goes the other way around. You are thinking of Krishna, but now in the third step, Krishna has started thinking about you. And he will start thinking of a devotee who is extraordinary. Just like Prabhupada, who not only live for Krishna, but who die for him. And that's the whole point. It is said, people who live for God, they are fortunate, but the most fortunate people are those who can die for him. That's what Prabhupada said. I'm in America, and Prabhupada said, even if I die, I will die while fulfilling the mission of my spiritual master. So there is no loss. Prabhupada said that. There are many devotees who go to Vrindavan to leave their body, but they cannot.
They're hoping they can leave their body.
Yeah, but they cannot. So I've seen many cases. One of my friends, his father was a devotee, went to Vrindavan and he got a room and he was staying there. But in the end he got sick, and then his children came and they took him to Delhi hospital. And he left the body there.
No.
Yeah. It doesn't happen.
That's what happened with Brahmananda.
Oh, yeah.
So Srila Prabhupada said to Brahmananda, "I don't want any pipes and tubes and things like that."
Yeah, Prabhupada
Right?
said.
And so Brahmananda didn't allow that to happen. And Prabhupada said that when it's time for you to go, I'll make sure that you don't have to go to the hospital, have pipes and
Oh, really?
tubes and everything.
Okay.
And he was just about to leave his body, and somebody's like, "I'm getting the ambulance and taking you straight to Delhi."
Oh.
And then while he was out doing that,
He just. Oh, see?
Oh, my God.
See then? So that's what happens. So you have to be really fortunate to die for God. That's why many devotees, they don't pray to Krishna, "Krishna, please allow me to live for you." They pray, "Please allow me to die for you." And that's a prayer. I mean, 𝗙𝗪𝗪𝗀 prays that. 𝗙𝗪𝗪𝗀, that's a simple prayer.
Does that mean that not that many people die in Vrindavan?
Huh?
Does that mean that not that many people die there because it's such an auspicious?
Yeah. You have to be very fortunate. There was one saint, sannyasi saint. He was my friend, and he said, whatever happens, I'll go and die there. And that's it. So he went there, and he so he was almost like a Babaji. So he went there and he was living under a tree and chanting. And he said, "Well, now it's okay. I mean to say, there are no relatives, nothing, and I'll die here. There's no problem." What happened was, in the night a storm came and the tree fell on his leg and he got a fracture.
Oh my God.
And then they took him to hospital, to Delhi.
Oh, yeah.
It was a multiple fracture.
And so he died in Delhi again.
Yeah, he died
A lot of people die in Delhi.
by
Oh,
complication.
Delhi's a bigger place.
Yeah, and Delhi is a place.
But to have that desire to die for Krishna means that you have gotten Krishna's mercy, isn't it?
Yeah, that desire also develops by mercy of Krishna and spiritual master, and yeah, it happens. It doesn't come easily. Prabhupada says that to live for Krishna, that's fortune, but to die for him, that's the most fortunate, and that's what we are looking for. 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪. That's what we are looking for. By the way, if Krishna comes here and if he says, "Okay, ask me one wish," just one, not two. So what do you ask him? Yeah, that's what we have to wish. Let me die for you.
Like that, what was her name? Was it Rosalita or who died in Africa?
I don't know.
Protecting.
Ladini.
Haladni, yeah, Haladni, Mataji, yeah. Yes, so she died for Krishna. That's why, mark my word, die for him. I didn't say die in Vrindavan.
Thank you.
I never said. I said die for him. And that is the most fortunate thing. She died serving, protecting devotees. She died for him. And you know what happens if you die for Krishna? If you live for Krishna, you see that there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita, ye yatha mam prapadyante. That's Krishna's rule. Whatever you do, so shall he reward accordingly. If you live for him, he will live for you. That's fine. If you live for him, he will maintain you, he will look after you, he'll live for you. But if you die for him, then what happens? Can he die for you? He can't die. So, he can't do anything. He's trapped. Basically, he's trapped. Because he can't fulfill his vow. And that's why he says, now I am indebted to such a devotee. And he gives himself to such a devotee. That's what he's told to gopis. Now I give myself to you because I can't die for you. As simple as that. So the only way to grasp him, to catch him, Prabhupada says in one of his lecture, if you do devotion nicely, Krishna will be in your fist. Prabhupada actually ends that lecture there. And devotees are saying, Jai Prabhupada. And that was a beautiful statement, because if you want to really capture Krishna, that's what Mahaprabhu is giving, that gift. You can capture God. Prabhupada says so many times, Mayavadis want to become God. But we are greater than Mayavadis because we want to capture him. Just like Nand Baba, he has captured him. Krishna follows his order. That can only happen when you die for him. And that can only happen when you are doing a service which requires a lot of commitment, responsibility, and a lot of risk. And then you are completely focused. And then Krishna gives you this opportunity to die for him. And then you are out. That is what is thinking, what Krishna is thinking about you. So that's how we go from second to the next step. And that is why it is said to go from Kanishk to Madhyam, that's easy. First to second, read scriptures. But go from second to third, it's almost impossible. And that's why Prabhupada says, to go from Namapra to Namabhas, that's easy. But to go from Namabhas to Shuddhanam, that's very, very difficult. And that's what we have to show Krishna there. That's what we have to show. Somehow we can show him. He gives this gift and he starts reciprocating with you. And that is the three levels of meaning of Krishna consciousness: first class devotee, second class, and third class. Third class, second class, first class. That's how it goes. So that is Krishna consciousness. And so what do we have to do now? We have to chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thank you very much.
This is a wonderful class.
Hare Krishna. Any questions, anything?
Yeah,
It's a mystery
I
and a
got some on
meaning.
the flower. You said that Krishna.
Can you just open this? Yeah.
Krishna's desires in the fragrance
Yeah.
of the flower. So when we offer,
When you offer Krishna this flower, Krishna takes the fragrance and he puts his desire, sweet, fragrant desires in the flower. And when you're smelling the flower, that is not ordinary fragrance. That is a fragrance of the desires of God. That's how we think.
okay, so let's say tomorrow, right? When we are smelling the flower that was as prasad,
Yeah.
then what should be in our minds?
Yeah, same. That you are breathing pure desires of God. That's how it means. And so, if you're breathing his desires,
I cannot delineate. Okay, this is what Krishna wants.
okay, no problem. You are breathing the desires of God, and now you have developed a conviction. I have to fulfill his desires, and whatever desires you can fulfill, you do that. It inspires you to fulfill his desires. That's the whole activity there. The lamp signifies something. What do we say? What's the lamp? What's the light?
Knowledge.
lamp.
Yeah, lamp.
A lamp signifies knowledge. Okay, it can signify knowledge, but you see, so you see in lamp we
Light of knowledge.
you can say light of knowledge, but it signifies actually life force, prana. So that's why there's a system of Panch Pradeep. Five. What do we say in English? Bhakti. What do they keep there?
Wicks.
Wicks. 5 wicks we keep. 5 wicks represents 5 pranas, Panch prana, or life force. The fire represents a life force. That's what we are offering. We are offering in the form of lamp. We are offering to Krishna our enthusiasm, our very life force, our endeavors to God. That's what we are doing. So that's how it's all. That's what devotee understands.
Can I talk a little bit about
that
an anxiety that I felt?
that story?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So what happened is the next day, one of the devotees said, "Would you like to wash Srila Prabhupada's cloth?" And I'm like, "Yeah."